Peacock debuted the last two Halloween movies and then took a stab at the slasher genre with the boneheaded They Them last summer. This year, one can only hope 2023 will bring better things from the Peacock and the Blumhouse. Over the weekend, as a special Friday the 13th treat, the channel debuted the new slasher film from the director of Alone and the writer of most of the Scream franchise. It's called Sick. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. Sick is new, streaming on Peacock. It's directed by John Hyams and written by Kevin Williamson and Catelyn Crabb. It's April 2020, the beginning of the quarantine that fisted the world back into your homes for seemingly forever. Everyone is paranoid of germs and each other. Looking for a place to go for the lockdown, Parker, played by Gideon Adlon, and Miri, played by Bethlehem Million, head out to a cabin on the lake in the countryside with supplies aplenty. But when Parker begins getting texts from a stranger who seems to know a whole lot about her and what she's doing at that very moment, it becomes obvious that she has a stalker. Soon, Parker's boyfriend, DJ, played by Dylan Sprayberry, shows up uninvited to the party. But he's not the only one, as there is someone in the shadows with a knife and a hunger for vengeance. Sick is everything one would want in a slasher movie. It's got a masked killer, a remote location, lots of cutlery, and most importantly, a long extended chase scene full of macabre action and exciting violence. The chase scene has become somewhat of a lost art in horror, specifically in slashers. Some of the best scenes from your favorite slashers occur when it's one killer giving his all to add one more to his kill list, and one lone survivor doing everything they can do to avoid it. Sick feels like a beautiful ode to those old slasher films, specifically the Friday the 13th films, so it's appropriate the film premiered last Friday the 13th. Writer Kevin Williamson has expressed his affinity for the Friday the 13th films and shows his love here more thrillingly and expertly than he ever did in the Scream series. Naming key players Jason and Pamela is no mistake. Neither is setting Sick on a cabin by a serene lake. If you're a fan of the Friday the 13th series, you owe it to yourself to check out this electrifying slasher. Sick really doesn't let up for a minute. The opening sequence feels ripped straight from a Scream script, with a killer interacting with a kid via phone, then having the two fight to the death in a small apartment. But after the bombastic opener, things slow down a bit for some getting-to-know-you time, showing that Parker is a little lax on the social distancing, while her friend Miri is more of a rule follower, showing more caution about the guidelines we were all supposed to follow. While the Scream films were full of references to other horror films, Sick is straight-on horror, and any self-referential comedy is reserved for comments about the time of the pandemic. Think of it. The lockdown was the setting for a perfect slasher. Everyone is masked, everyone is home alone. There really was no one out and about to help you. Sick takes full advantage of the shit we all had to go through and forces it through a darkly comic lens. For example, when Parker eludes the killer and is able to flag down a car, the driver asks her where her mask is, not even considering the immediate danger of a killer fast on Parker's heels. It's ludicrous, but Sick does a fantastic job of depicting an especially ludicrous, paranoid time in our history. Gideon Adlon is fantastic as Parker, one of the not-so-wholesome potential victims. She's not your typical bone rack of a gal, and looks more like the girl-next-door types you often saw in the 80s slashers. In the little time that you get to know her, we find that she's quite complex in that she seeks attention, yet often pushes those she courts away. Miri, played by Bethlehem Million, is equally likable, as Parker's best friend, who worries about her, but also wants the best for her. Finally, Dylan Sprayberry plays CJ, who could have played a typical goofy kid just out looking to get laid, but manages to have depth as well. This film allows the viewer a chance to get to know these three characters, and the actor's skill makes you care whether they live or die. Sick has a small cast, but just because it doesn't have a big body count doesn't mean there isn't a lot of bloody action and suspense ratcheted up tight. John Hyams directed Alone, a surprise slasher hit about a girl in a car being followed by a car behind her. Hyams made that simple premise sing with lots of unconventional twists and non-stop action. Hyams continues the trend with Sick. For the last hour, there is barely a minute to catch your breath. There has been a lot of experimental and elevated horror released lately, trying to subvert expectations and stand out as something very, very different from the norm. Then there's Sick, who just does the tried-and-true slasher formula to perfection. There's a reason the slasher film has endured the test of time, and filmmakers John Hyams and Kevin Williamson prove that the subgenre of horror is alive, kicking, screaming, and slashing.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality.